Hey Angeli, how are you?
Oh, hi Kayla. So sorry, I just had my headphones in. I was just catching up on the latest episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Oh, I'm totally hooked. I just binge listened to the last 3 episodes. The inspiration it has always gets me through my day.
I know. Between the entrepreneurs, CEOs, best-selling authors, thought leaders, amazing speakers, and famous people and personalities, there is just so much great content.
Right? Lou really taps into the heart and soul of the guests and totally decodes how they are able to thrive.
Yeah, which interview do you like most?
Oh gosh, that's impossible to choose.
I know, I'm trying to pick. How about favorite question? Your all-time favorite movie?
Gotta run, Angeli. Keep on listening.
Check you later, Kayla, and thrive loud. Today on Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
By the time I was 30, I thought I knew all the answers, and I realized at 30, I did know all the answers. My problem was I didn't know all the questions.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have a transformational leader, accomplished entrepreneur, education advocate, motivational speaker, and author. He founded the Great American Cookie Company, was the CEO of Caribou Coffee. He also founded Charter Bank and Trust, as well as worked at Brand Bank as well. He has also chaired the Georgia Film, Video, and Music Advisory Board, which I guess we have to thank him for all the amazing movies that have come out in the last 10 years in the Georgia area or shows on Netflix. And now he has just released his new book, Time to Get Tough: How Cookies, Coffee, and a Crash Led to Success in Business and Life. I bring you living proof that there are no limits as to what we as individuals can accomplish. Thrive Loud listeners, Michael Coles. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing just great. Looks like the sun may actually come out in Atlanta for a change, so that's always a good thing.
You know, living in the northeast part of the U.S. during winter months, I just hate speaking to people who are in the best weather ever in warmer climates.
Well, it's a little chilly today. It's 61, so yeah, it's actually going to be a beautiful day.
Hold on one second. I want to make this clear. Anytime the word chilly and 61 are put together, anyone who's listening in colder climates is like, really? Come on. Anyway.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, totally get it.
So, Michael, you've legitimately had a storied career. One of the jokes I had was after reading it, this guy's had a delicious career, obviously, with cookies and coffee, two of my favorite things. I think it would be really cool to give a little bit of a journey. You've done a lot of stuff, and I think you have a lot of lessons to teach. So I want to kind of pass the baton to you so that you can share with our listeners a little bit of how this is one. I don't even know how anyone could have such a range of entrepreneurship, not just in starting businesses, but also getting involved in many different markets as well. How do you even start when you start telling your story? Maybe that's the better first question to kick off this show.
Well, you know, I was very fortunate. I grew up as a poor kid, and I don't say that to try to get any sympathy out of the audience, because a lot of people have had worse beginnings than I have. But I was very fortunate at a very young age. I had to go to work early, 13, basically working several jobs. But my major job was with a guy by the name of Sattler, who hired me in a clothing store and probably has put me on the path to entrepreneurship and really giving me a real understanding of the total structure of business. He was a very methodical guy who was a brilliant guy, but really taught me not just about, like one part of the business, but wanted me to learn everything about business. And the one thing that he stressed to me a long, long time ago was that the fundamental principles of any business will basically apply to any business. And if you remember that you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room.
I want to jump in there. I wanted to hear the fundamental principles of any business. What were some of those principles that you took? Because I'm actually curious.
Well, for instance, in other words, if I'm going to make it real simple. Let's say you have a clothing company and you have to have it outside tailoring. You didn't have to be the best tailor in the world, but you had to understand what tailoring was about. And fundamentally, you could do some of it if you needed to. Just as in most businesses, I certainly would never have considered myself to be the most financially oriented CEO, but I certainly understood how to read and understand the financial area of the business and the financial statements.
Gotcha.
So it took me, because I started working when I was very young. By the time I was 30, I thought I knew all the answers. And I realized at 30, I did know all the answers. My problem was I didn't know all the questions. And
Great.
it took me a long time to realize that if I really wanted to be a really effective CEO, I had to surround myself with people who were a lot smarter than me in their particular areas of expertise. We could learn from each other and we could follow the same vision.
When you now, just to help the listeners go through this, you obviously had worked in that clothing company, and then there was really your first major successful entrepreneurial venture, which was certainly in a different industry. Can you share with the listeners a little bit about your success in the dessert business?
So, I really thought I would spend my life after starting at 13 and staying in the clothing business virtually until I was 33. I thought I would always be in the clothing business. But in 1976, I really had kind of a realization that the industry was moving overseas. I had three very young kids. I didn't want to travel 3 weeks a month to Asia. And so I knew I wanted to take a different route in my business career. I still thought it would have something to do in clothing, but I saw a cookie store out in California. There were a number of things that happened. I came back to Atlanta. I told my wife Donna that I was going to get out of the clothing business, at least for now, and we'll figure out what we'll do together for the rest of our lives. But while we're thinking about it, let's open up a cookie store, and just basically to have income while we were trying to figure out the rest of our lives. And so we did it with a friend of mine, partner, to go into the cookie business. And the truth is, the reason I think our company succeeded with very little money and no understanding of the real food business was the fact that we didn't know anything about bakery business or any of that. We ran it like a retail store. I could have just as easily have been selling shirts on those counters as I was individual cookies. So it was run very differently. We had a lot of product. We did a lot of promotions. We had trained our salespeople on the counter. They weren't just order takers. They were salespeople. If you bought a cookie, someone would say, if you buy 6, you get 1 free. Little things like that just were not being done in that business. But the biggest thing that we did in that business was I knew that if we were trying to survive as an impulse business, we would never make it. And so we created this thing called the cookie cake, which were these large decorated cookies to change the business from impulse to destination.
It's really smart. And I joke about this. My kids are much older now, but I can tell you there were many a cookie a cake at many a birthday party in the younger years. So totally get through that. I want to ask this question because this is a tough one. Coming from one location and one store and getting a business running efficiently is one thing, but then being able to replicate and multiply that is another. And some of the biggest challenges that the retail industry has faced over the years. What do you think you did to help make that transition and be successful on that front?
Well, I knew that the one thing that could kill almost any business, whether it was really clothing or food, is consistency. And, it's like if you walk into, I think one of the great examples of that is today, let's say Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
You walk into a Chick-fil-A anywhere, it's so consistent. You almost feel like it's the Stepford Wives. It's amazing how consistent they are. And so I knew we had to do that. And because I came out of the clothing industry, I understood manufacturing. And so again, it was not knowing how to create batter and ship it across state lines, but my clothing background of manufacturing and having to ship product told me that instead of having frozen product like most of our competitors did, when you bake it, it's good when it's warm and tastes like a hockey puck when it's cold. We decided we would do it refrigerated, and we created a whole system that never existed before. And I will tell you that when I sat down with a food engineer and told him what I wanted to do, he said, it won't work. He said, nobody does that. But he's right. Nobody does it. But now people do it. We created it. And so it was, there's a great expression. What is that? What is it? The mother of invention and the necessity.
Necessity is the mother of invention. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what we had to do. I didn't know any better, so I did it all wrong, and it just happened to work out okay.
Just for a grand scope of things, how large did the Great American Cookie Company become, and understand the breadth of what it was in sales as well?
So we started the company with $8,000 and borrowed $25,000, which we had to put up every asset we owned to get started, including having to personally guarantee our first location's mall lease, which was $25,000 a year for 10 years, $250,000. We really had no choice but to succeed. We could not fail because we would have gone broke. But the company, from that $8,000 investment, we eventually had close to 400 stores nationwide and sales over $100 million.
I was going to ask this question, Michael, because I had another CEO on this program who had a very successful chain retail operation in his life. I said, at what particular point did you realize, whoa, I'm a big deal?
Well, I don't know that I joke about this in the book. I always talk about the fact that I hate the word success because it always indicates that you've arrived as opposed you're still on this journey. And I know I am more successful today than I used to be because when I go to hotels, I don't take the little bars of soap anymore, but I do grab all the shampoos I can get my hands on. So, But I think that I don't know that I ever felt that way. I'm a scrappy kind of guy, and I think that I always was looking to figure out how am I going to go out of business and how do I stay relevant. And so for every business I've ever been involved in, my dashboard or what the things that keep me up at night was how to keep the company moving along. Understanding that my competitors are looking at what we're doing and their starting point is our new product entry point. They've got a leg up on us right from the beginning. And so I've got to constantly be thinking farther and farther ahead as to how to make the company even better than it was that day. And one of the mantras that I've had in business is when I sat with my executive teams was to always say to them, when you think about this business, think about if we were starting the same business today and we were competing against us, what would we do different to keep ourselves relevant and differentiate ourselves so we could be successful?
So I love that story. And obviously, giving the timeline for our listeners, this took place all the way through the 80s and the 90s, correct? That was the length of time of the Great American Cookie Company?
We sold the company. Yeah, we started 1977 and we sold it in 1998.
Right. And an amazing run at this. And most people...
let me just mention something. Last night I had the opportunity. I was at an event talking to about almost 700 people, and someone asked me a similar question about, we started $8,000. Must have been a lot of money back then. I'm like, it was never a lot of money to start a business. And also, let's remember, it was probably the worst possible time to ever start a business. Interest rates were 20%.
Mm. And it's actually really interesting because now, and we'll segue to this a little bit in our conversation, but so you sell the company and now you've obviously trying to figure out maybe what's next. You're still relatively young as you are today. What led you to go accept the reins of working over at Caribou Coffee?
Well, I made the greatest mistake a consultant can ever make, which is I fell in love with the customer's brand and realized that they really had an incredible product in their own name. Let me just tell you this story really quick.
Sure.
I've been fortunate to lead a couple of different companies, but at Caribou, when I was doing this research, about halfway through the research, one of the things that really hit me in going into a Caribou coffee was I would see people come in with a Caribou T-shirt, or I would see them come in with a Caribou hat. It wasn't, remarkable to see someone have a Caribou mug, but it dawned on me that I had been to a lot of Starbucks, and to this day, I have never been in a Starbucks where I've ever seen anyone wearing a Starbucks baseball cap or a
Mm.
Starbucks T-shirt. And it dawned on me that what I had there was a brand religion. I had people who were so proud and such a part of Caribou that they would drag their friends out of a Starbucks to get them to come to Caribou because they believed so much in the brand. And of course, I've been associated with brands like that, like with Harley Davidson, and the great stories of the turnaround of that company was led by their customers who were evangelists for the brand. And so for me, the excitement to have the opportunity to work with a brand like that, where your customers were your evangelists, was just not something I had ever experienced before. And it was just so exciting to know that if we could give customers all over this same kind of great experience with product and environment, we could build something pretty damn good.
So for the listeners, to help give this what pretty damn good is, in the first 5 years that Michael worked at Caribou Company, he doubled the size of the business. I wanted to, and the company also went public as well, as I think I remember.
Right,
reading some of my
September
notes.
10th. Yeah, September 10th of 2005, but who's counting?
Okay, so this is actually something that I wanted to dive into. You came from a retail background. You made a retail company flourish. You then worked with a product on with Caribou Coffee and led an organization with great growth in this. I want to understand your leadership style. There's always something that people might pick out about a leader, that they love to work for that person, or they have a certain strength. Can you pinpoint what your specific strength is as a leader?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One is I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. I think I've mentioned that,
Yeah.
but when you just say that, that means you've got to let people who are doing their job do their job, and know that they're going to make some mistakes, and let them flourish. Because one of the great things about Caribou is the company had been in negative same-store sales for close to 3 years when I got there. And when we turned the company around in 2.5 years to go from where it was to becoming a public company, and you know better than anyone what it takes to go out to become a public company, the
Yep.
scrutiny that you're put under. The thing I'm probably the most proud to say is, with very few exceptions, we did that with the same executive team. I mean, I just basically let the genie out of the bottle and let these people do their jobs. They were smart, they were bright, they were in love with the brand, and basically I let them do their job. And the other thing I would say, that probably is that I let people challenge me on decisions. That doesn't always mean they override what I want to do, but I don't have them feel afraid of their job. I want them to feel they're my partner, and I want them to feel all the way down the line that their work in the company is valued, and that's right down to a barista. And we didn't have a hierarchy at Caribou or at the cookie company where somebody on the front line didn't feel like they could pick up the phone and call me directly and give me an idea.
You know, it sounds like, Michael, whether letting people be who they are and letting the genie out of the bottle is really the culture that you create. Whether it's, people call those flat organizations, or the ability that everyone feels empowered to do something. I think that speaks volumes of, no matter how big your business is, if it's just a small one or not, to be able to recognize that the superpowers, for lack of a better word, that are in the great people that you have, and helping them flourish and grow. A great leader has to do that, almost like, letting the seeds grow and being able to manage it accordingly. I think that's a great message for a lot of people. Yeah.
When I think back to Irving Sattler, who took a big chance on hiring me when I was 13 to come into his business, which he was a pretty scrappy guy and didn't have a lot of money when he started that business, could not afford to make many mistakes. And I could have certainly been one of them, but I wasn't. The fact that I think I learned it from him because, as I got older, got more entrenched in the business, he started giving me more and more responsibility. Think about this. At 16 years old, I was doing all the buying for the store.
Wow.
At 17, I was managing the store.
At those ages, I was very concerned about, asking a girl out on a date. So,
so was I. This was a much safer environment.
So let's keep the clock rolling forward here. After Caribou, as I understand it, and we have some overlapping relations here, you kind of veered into the banking industry, and at a very interesting time, mind you. Is this? You want to share a little bit about the specifics about this?
Well, I had been in the banking business once before. Back in 1987, I started a bank with a group of Marietta people in Marietta, Georgia, called Charter Bank. And I really invested in the bank and wound up becoming chairman later on. And I went into the banking business because I frankly didn't understand how banks made money. I knew they made money, but I didn't know how. And I figured, what better way to learn than help a bunch of guys open a bank? And that's what we did. And my role in the bank, again, I'm not a banker, but I know how to grow a business and I know how to create a great customer experience. And as you would remember back in those days, back in the late 80s, banking business was changing, was becoming more competitive, more retail oriented. And I figured to myself, well, I know a little bit about retail. I probably could do this okay. And we did. And Brand Bank, when from my banker at the cookie company, actually, when he came back out of retirement and was going to become part of the management team of Brand in this recapitalization of the bank, and called me to see if I'd be interested in becoming on the board. I was fascinated by it again. It was 106-year-old bank at the time, and had very smart people coming in to help recapitalize it. And I never thought I'd ever be chairman, but it turned out 2 years down the road, I did become chairman. And again, I let the people all around the bank do their jobs. We had a lot of smart people. My job, as far as I could see, as chairman and as a board member, was to help grow the business in a smart way. And that's what I did. I stuck to what my expertise was. I didn't try to take the place of anybody else. My job was knowing how to grow a business in a healthy way.
I've got one more question before I get to the fun Thrive Loud related questions here, because this one is just piqued in my interest. A lot of the businesses that you've been in have been, we'll call them product or tactical, whether it be from clothing to cookies to coffee. These are things that we can touch, taste, smell, feel. Banking, I guess you could say you could touch, taste, and smell, feel money. But we do recognize.
And you notice they all start with a C.
Yeah, I did notice that. There's a lot of C's following you around, and your last name is Coles, so maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
But Michael, this is a good question. There's a lot of products out there today, digital products that we can't touch, feel, and see as much as we'd like to. I guess as someone who's had great leadership experience and knowing what they do best and knowing how to run businesses that way, give me an idea about some of the challenges you see as a leader with the way products have evolved today and the digital space and how they can connect people a little bit better. How would you, if you were to be, someone came over to you and say, we want you to run some digital product company that wasn't necessarily a retail-based product or a selling product or a banking product, how would you go about it? I'm just kind of curious from your purview of how the world has evolved technologically to your experience in the past.
Well, I guess the way I could relate to that is in 1999, after I had an unsuccessful run for the U.S. Senate, my good friend Roy Barnes, who was then governor of Georgia, asked me what I'd like to do to help him. And I asked him if I could take over the film commission for the state, which had really floundered. And I guess that's as close a connection as I can get, because certainly that's not retail. Right. And somewhere along the way, I figured out the right question to ask when I met with Greg Torrey, who was the executive director of the Film Commission. When he came to our first meeting, his agenda was to say, how do we get more people to come to Georgia and make movies. And on the way over to that breakfast, I was thinking about what to talk to him about. And I asked the question in reverse. I said, if we don't have studios and we don't have good editing places, we don't have a good infrastructure, and we don't have any tax incentives, why does anybody come to Georgia and make a movie in the first place?
Right.
And so I guess if I were asked to come and do something like you just described, the first question I would want to have to understand is, why do people buy the product? What are the attributes of the product? Because until you understand why anyone has a transaction with you, you cannot figure out how to bring in new business. That's the basis of how you have to start.
I think what's great, and what you've just brought this all home to, Michael, is, like you said, when you were 30, you knew all the answers, but the reality was you didn't know all the questions. And the reality is that by asking incredible questions, you're helping to solve the greatest problems. And I think that's a great message for everybody.
Yeah.
I ask this question to every guest that comes on the program, Michael, and I'm curious. You've had a tremendously, incredibly successful career. You continue to now a new book coming out with Time to Get Tough. You're speaking, you're connecting to so many different people, and yet we all have off days that aren't necessarily our best. When you have trouble thriving, who or what practice do you seek to help yourself get back on the thriving track?
Wow, that's a tough one. I guess the answer to that would be, I get up most mornings probably feeling more the way you just described than this very vibrant kind of entrepreneur that just wants to get out there and change the world. And so every morning I get up, I grab one cup of coffee, I go downstairs and I throw my leg over a Peloton. And the rule is that you can't get off the Peloton until you pedal for 5 minutes. And if you still feel like you don't want to be there, then leave. But at the end of 5 minutes, so far is what keeps happening. At the end of 5 minutes, the competitive juices start. Get myself back on track. I finish the workout and go face the day. But, I have been very fortunate to be able to think very hard about a lot of people that I've been able to connect with, who I have, for whatever reason, allowed them to find strength that perhaps they didn't know they really had. I mean, you're right. I've been very fortunate to have the career that I've had, and I really see myself now in a position to be able to bring a message to people, which is the reason I wrote this book, which is, you can do more than you think you can. Don't let anybody tell you what your limits are.
Let's do that right now, Michael. Let's give all the plugs. Share with the Thrive Loud community all the places where people can get the book, learn more about you, find all the things that you're in a promotion. This is your plug window here, Michael. Whatever you want to share with everybody here.
Well, I have a website. It's michaelcoles.com, and there's a lot of interviews, podcasts that are on there, as well as events that I'll be at. There's a link to being able to get the book. The book is available on Amazon. It's available in both Kindle and hardback, and it is also available at a lot of local bookstores around the country. And if you like the book, I would sure appreciate a review on Amazon. And if you don't like the book, don't do that.
I want to tell people his team actually sent me a copy of the book. It's actually in my hand right now. The cover alone will make you hungry for reasons I'll let people have to go check it out. We'll have the links here, which people can see in the show notes, of a very, very, very large cookie. So I think it's got a great message. And I was just about to ask this process, and I know you worked with a co-writer. Did you enjoy the writing process and putting this all together?
No. It's very difficult writing a book. But it was so important to me to do it that, it took 2 years between editing and writing and finally getting it out. It was a tough process. I can't say I loved every minute of it, but it brought out stories that I didn't remember throughout my life, things that it just kind of I had forgotten about. And again, the book was written with one thing in mind, which was to teach or give lessons based on things I've done well and things that didn't go so well. There's a great quote in the book from Bobby Jones, greatest amateur golfer of all time, who said he never learned anything from a golf tournament he won. And I think that one of the chief lessons I hope people get out of the book is you're going to learn a lot more from mistakes than you ever are from success.
That's a great quote. Michael, I've got two more here. We're going to have one, which is the standard question here. If you could share with the listeners, what is your all-time favorite movie?
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, by far.
And why does that movie connect so much with you?
Well, first of all, the energy between Paul Newman and Robert Redford was incredible. But the story itself, which of course is completely embellished from the truth,
right,
which of course is great, it's just this relationship that the two of them had. And that to me it was just such a great buddy story, to the point where they go out and both die at the very end.
Yep.
And I don't know, the music was great. It's a great movie.
Someone had always said to me, by the way, that, because they montage the whole trip across the world and wherever they go, as opposed to, showing the scenes, like their travel pieces. Someone said they could have made a whole other movie about just the two of them traveling together. So I thought it would have been spectacular to watch if they ever were able to go back in time and make another one. But it's such a classic and so well, those two characters are just bigger than life, especially at that time.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that, and again, I'm not trying to be a name dropper, but when I was running the film commission, I got to have dinner with Robert Redford twice, two very small dinners, because he was making a movie at the time in Georgia. And he's a terrific guy. I mean, I really liked him a lot. And I talked a lot with him about that movie. So that's a spot. Probably also has a very special place for me.
Oh, that's great. I want to say this because I think all the Thrive Loud, I always end every show with a movie quote, and I wanted, because the movies are always fun because they help connect us. The Thrive Loud community doesn't know this. They probably owe a little bit of thanks to you. Those great questions that you asked about helping to change the way the state of Georgia actually does filming, what people probably don't know, and I just happen to be very observant because I watch a ton of, whether it's TV shows or Netflix shows, anytime you see that Georgia peach, people that come up at the end of production, you know that there's been some form of Atlanta. Stranger Things, I know, is filmed in Georgia, and there have been numerous movies, tons. In fact, many of the movies that were just in the Oscars that just came out were all filmed in Georgia. So, Michael, I think we owe a huge gratitude to you, debt of gratitude to what you've done, because it obviously has kept filming here in the States, jobs here, and you should be really proud about that. I hope you are.
I'm very proud of it. It's actually, of all the things I've been able to do in business, it's the thing I'm the most proud of, because it's high paying jobs. It's very good for the environment. It gives people out of college an entryway that they wouldn't have had before. And, I can't tell you how much it means to me. It's incredible.
Not too long ago, I think it was right about a year ago from this time, I actually was touring colleges with my kids, and we were at Emory University, and I'm looking at this building. I go, that looks really familiar. And then someone clued me in and go, that's the building they use in Stranger Things on Netflix. I'm like, are you kidding? That's when I started taking note of, like, how many more movies are they filming in Georgia? And it's really impressive.
Well, let me tell you one quick thing. I don't know how much time we have, but let me just
whatever
tell
you want. We could keep. The best part about this is no one's cutting us off for a commercial break right now.
So when I started, putting the plan together, and I have to tell you, I ran into one of my board commission members at the time that I put on the board, a guy named Joey Ryman, and there are so many notable people that were on that board that helped us formulate how to change and bring back the business. But one of the things I did is I had a video done. It started out, it would show a scene of New York, it would show a scene of the Grand Canyon, a scene of the Sahara Desert, and about 6 or 7 other little montages of places all around the world. And at the very end of it, it would say, all of these scenes were filmed in Georgia.
Oh, that's great.
And that's when I got these communities to wake up into the fact that it didn't all have to be filmed in Atlanta. It didn't all have to be filmed in Savannah. It could be filmed right in your town, and the impact it would have on your community would be far more than anything you could ever imagine.
Michael Coles, truly a pleasure. Someone who's been thriving loud his entire life and continued success with this book. And I'm sure we're going to hear more of you sooner than later. So and keep spinning on that Peloton.
I will. Thank you so much.
Truly a pleasure. And to all our Thrive Loud listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.